Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call the meeting of the Diversity Committee to order. My name is Rhonda Herman. I'm chair of the Diversity Committee now. It's my first meeting, so bear with me. I would like to introduce a new committee member, Haida Mahatis. I would also, Neil Zuckerman is not here, but Vice Chair Susan is here. So, Michael, are there any public speakers?
None.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to, next we're going to have the approval of the minutes from February 25th Diversity Committee meeting. May I have a motion?
I wasn't here.
Yeah, I have to move it, and I hate to say this, but my computer seized up, and this is all I can get. I'm gonna shut down for a little while, but I do move it and
Okay.
Second?
I guess she's got a second
we will have to do this again.
before the,
Yeah. All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved for conditionally, I guess, for now? Yeah, okay. Now, are there any updates on the 2019 work plan?
Yes, there was one change. This meeting was originally scheduled for May of 2019, and we moved the meeting from May until June. That's the only change to the work plan.
Okay, are there any comments from the committee members? Very good. Michael, can you take us through the executive summary?
Yes. Let me introduce Zenaida Chappé, who will give us a brief overview of the MW-SDLV outreach events.
Good afternoon. DDCR hosted and participated at several industry-focused MWBE outreach events during the first quarter of 2019. Amongst those are two major projects, M&R Skanska Echo event highlighting the Croton Harmon Phase 2 project, which is a $365 million project, and the third track Long Island Railroad project currently valued at $1.6 billion and will evolve into a $2 billion. Each project currently has a 30% MWBE and SDVOB goal attached. And in addition, the MTA agency-wide staff will participate at the upcoming 2019 MWBE Forum hosted by Governor Cuomo, scheduled for later on this year. And as a result of the MTA outreach efforts, $124 million in contracts were awarded to the MWBE SDVOB firms, certified firms. Concludes.
Thank you. So we're now going to go to the DBE certification activity report. Danny Camacho.
Good afternoon. In first quarter of 2019, we certified 18 firms, which was more than this period in 2018. So we have an upward trend in certification. We will continue with Zenaida's support to host outreach events to attract more prospective DBE firms. That's it.
Thank you. So let me just make a statement on Pride Month. June is Pride Month, and the MTA is fully engaged in various activities, including the Pride Metro cards, Pride merchandise, and a Pride train. And it's my understanding that we are going to be having an event in conjunction with transit coming up. So we are fully engaged in all of the activities. Next is going to be Chief Monahan, who is going to give us some comments about a question that was asked at the previous Diversity Committee meeting. Chief?
Thank you, Michael. Well, in response to a question that came up at the February Diversity Committee meeting, I'd like to briefly discuss the MTA PD hiring process. The MTA PD has a total of 783 sworn members in the ranks of police officer through chief. Hiring to address vacancies is a collaborative process between the Police Department, Human Resources, and MTA Legal. The steps in the recruitment process begins with an advertising recruitment campaign for the position of MTA police officer. This includes, but is not limited to, attending career fairs, neighborhood events, military installations, among others, as well as the position being posted on the MTA PD website. Advertising is placed with a variety of media outlets. Now, the written examination is scheduled and conducted. Those who pass the written exam are then selected to take the physical fitness test, PFT. This selection is based on a random process which utilizes a PeopleSoft computer application to select without regard to protected characteristics. PeopleSoft system uses an algorithm established by MTA BSC and IT to provide a randomized list of candidates for each physical fitness test as necessary. Then, a panel interview is conducted for those who pass the PFT, physical fitness test, and this panel is composed of a representative from MTA PD Applicant Investigation Unit and a member of the MTA Human Resources. Then, a background investigation begins after successfully completing the panel interview. After that, a conditional offer is extended to those who had successfully completed this background investigation. Candidates then undergoes additional post-conditional testing, such as polygraph testing, psychological evaluation, medical exam, and a background investigation follow-up. The final offer is made, and the candidate is scheduled for being sworn in and beginning the police academy.
Thanks, Chief. Next is Allison McGregor from MTA Legal, who's going to talk about the availability and the methodology.
Good afternoon. So I will talk a little bit about how we calculate utilization, and particularly the role of the estimated availability analysis. So as shown on this slide, our availability analysis is really two steps, internal and external. We are required to complete a utilization analysis that identifies job categories that have an underutilization or concentration of minorities and women in relation to their availability in the labor market. So if we have underutilization, that's a situation where we have fewer females and or minorities than we would expect to see based on their presence in the relevant labor market. So as we go through, this is the general framework. I'm going to talk about each of these elements in the next slides. So turning to the next slide, what is internal availability? There's internal and external. So this slide talks about internal. We identify current employees that are available, which means promotable, transferable, or trainable for future openings. So if we're looking at the availability analysis for, say, a program manager at capital construction, which is in the chart, those positions that feed up into it are where we're looking for our internal analysis. Do we have women or minorities that might be promotable to that position we're looking at? So we're looking at our workforce data where, this requires some hands-on experience of our diversity staff who know their agencies. And this is what we do to come up with internal. All right, so the next slide, this is the more complicated analysis where we've had a lot of questions. What is estimated external availability? This is the second part of the two-factor test. In accordance with, we are looking to try to figure out how many females and minorities are available in the market. How do we do this? So we have categorized our different titles into 8 different job categories. We'll go through those in a minute, but this is a complicated task involving picking who goes in what category. And we also do an analysis where we assign what's called a SOC, S-O-C, or OCC code to each title. So the SOC, OCC code is the Standard Occupational Classification System. This is a statistical standard used by federal agencies to classify workers into occupational categories for the purpose of collecting, calculating, or disseminating data. So it's a number, all right? So we have assigned numbers based on these codes which agencies used and which the U.S. Census uses. So on the right side of here, on this slide is an actual cut and paste from the U.S. Census data showing the SOC and AUK codes for each of these job titles. We then take these codes and use the census data, again using the same codes, which shows the availability by ethnicity and gender for the reasonable recruitment area. So what we're trying to do is match up our numbers with the census numbers and use their data to come up with the availability analysis. So it's an estimated analysis because we have a lot of different titles in these categories. They have a lot of titles. But to give an example, let's say we had 15% estimated external availability for women in skilled craft. That means for all of the SOC, OCC coded jobs in the skilled craft category, in that reasonable recruitment area, 15% of those are women. This analysis is looking to the percentage of the women population in the reasonable recruitment area that the census report holds the same SOC, OCC title in a position analogous to those in our lists. So that is the external availability analysis. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so what is reasonable recruitment area? That is defined as the geographical area from which an organization typically finds qualified applicants to fill its positions. We are allowed under the FTA circular to designate our own that makes sense for our organization. We look at a national region for our executives and our high-level officials. Most of our jobs look at the regional area, which would be the service area. And for some local jobs, we use maybe the New York City 5 boroughs. There may be operational positions where we require people to live in the service area. So they vary by job titles and functions, but these are a general summary of our reasonable recruitment areas. So what is the 4/5 80% rule, and what does that do? So after we go through our two-factor analysis, we're looking at internal and external. We then need to see if we're meeting our goals. Where are we with utilization? So after we determine the estimated availability, we apply the 4/5 or 80% rule to see whether utilization might exist. And here's a chart. So if we look at our officials and administrators, and we have 25% of female representation in the workforce, in these categories, and 22% of the 80% rule, which is 4/5 of the estimated availability. So that 22% represents 4/5 of the estimated availability in the region. In this case, we're meeting our goal. We have more than the 4/5. In the skilled crafts, we have 6% and 15%. So in that case, we are not there. So any job category where the workforce representation is less than 80% of the estimated availability for women or minorities is considered an area of underutilization. And the last slide before I turn this over is just to illustrate how diverse our job categories are. So in some of these titles, you might have like professionals. You have both engineers, analysts, specialists, CPAs, attorneys, project managers. This is a diverse group of jobs that we're then looking to compare in the labor market. So hopefully that will give you some flavor of what the availability analysis is and how it works with our utilization numbers. So thank you.
Michael knows I've asked this question before. And I think I understand how it's done. Using the example of Metro North Railroad, most of the entry jobs start more or less where our far out train yards are, because the majority of commuter trains start out as far as you can put them, and they come in. So it's very nice. It's an attractive job for somebody who lives where that train yard is. It's not very attractive if you live on Long Island. It's not very attractive even if you live in the city to some extent. So is that the reason that the availability is different for the different agencies? Because we are reflecting the location from which they are likely to want to apply for our jobs?
Yes, it's the area where we reasonably could recruit from. So in looking at where we reasonably recruit from, you know, that where people actually live and apply for those jobs is part of that analysis. So my answer would be yes.
So even though most of your positions are the 14 counties, like Commissioner Metzger just said, because of certain jobs would only start out in Putnam and far out, then we could be possibly underrepresented because of who lives there and would apply.
Well, Putnam is one of the 14 counties.
I know, but,
Okay.
but it's a different demographic than looking at if people apply from New York City. If your whole area, though, is what I'm saying. Your RRA is the 14 counties, but who would actually be applying is different.
Yes, but on some level, I mean, this is was presented this way to make, you know, is a generalization. It does differ by job, by agency. So, you know, we were trying to give a flavor of what it looks like, but, you know, this is something that is taken into account for different agencies and for different jobs. So again, we were trying to, you know, simplify, but yes.
So if I wanted to draw the footprint from which you draw for a specific job on Metro North or Long Island Railroad, it would be a different footprint for that job than it would be for Long Island Railroad job.
It may.
For the local, those jobs that's in the local areas, that's where you would see that difference mainly. For those jobs that would be in that regional or that national, then those would
Then
be
they
pretty
would be.
similar. But those that are in that, that lower category, not the lower category, but that local category, you would see a difference in that availability there.
Just out of curiosity, and this can be offline sometime, I'm curious to know if we draw a lot of people outside of our 14 counties because we do service Connecticut.
We have all of the EO officers back here. Does anyone have an answer to that question or can respond to that?
Metro North. So we do focus on areas near for Connecticut. For that line, you'll find that the employees are more, you'll find more employees from that area for where we service on the New Haven line.
So are those, is that demography counted in as well? The Connecticut? I ask the question because I represent west of Hudson, and New Jersey Transit operates our lines for Metro North under contract. Most of the trains that are operated by Metro North coming in on the Port Jervis line, they're mostly staffed by people from New Jersey, not from Orange County. So that isn't part of your employee base?
There's a
But-
threshold that we look at when we decide our reasonable recruitment area, and if it doesn't meet that 5% threshold, we don't use that as a reasonable recruitment area.
That makes sense
So
to
it
me.
could vary depending on positions, but right now, what we have determined, and we went through a evaluation of how we're going to be consistent with our reasonable recruitment areas in the national and regional areas and in the local areas. It was a little bit more detailed or specific to the agencies. But to answer your question, I would defer that back over to Metro North, but if it did not meet that 5% threshold, it's not included.
Okay, great. It's perfect. So Dr. Green is going to give us an update on the first quarter EEO activities.
Okay, it's part of our efforts to be more to give more information and content to our statistics and progress towards increasing and encouraging diversity. This month, we're going to be taking a closer look at female representation at the MTA. Now, going forward, we envision providing closer looks at different groups at future meetings, but this meeting, we're going to focus on females. The following slide provides a big picture of the female representation at MTA. This data is as of March 31st, 2019. At that time, females represented 18% of the total MTA workforce across all of the job categories. That's about 13,473 females. Based on our first quarter 2019 estimated availability percentages for females, if MTA were to reach its full goal attainment, females would represent about 22% of the workforce. So we just want to kind of give a perspective. We're not there, but we're not real far from being there. The percentages in red represent areas of MTA-wide underutilization for females in the noted categories: administrative support, skilled craft, and service maintenance. Now, many of these positions are going to be in that local recruitment area that Allison spoke of a few minutes ago. Despite these indications of underutilization, we have about 10,000 females in these categories. The two job categories that present the greatest challenges for attracting and retaining females are skilled craft and service maintenance. There are three major obstacles for eradicating underutilization for females in these categories. One is that these combined two categories represent 74% of the employees across the MTA. If you see in the slide above, it's about 60,000 employees in those three categories. The majority of these positions are filled through the competitive civil service examination and may be traditionally male-dominated occupations and may not be the first choice for female applicants seeking employment. Second challenge is the lack of information and exposure to opportunities in transportation. Many women and young girls have not been exposed to information or experiences that spark their interest and give the prerequisite insight and skills for apprenticeship opportunities. This is a challenge. One of the things that we can do here is expand intern opportunities and school partnerships to address this challenge. The third major obstacle is that these positions are represented positions. And as we know, represented positions has a seniority component to it. In an operation that requires 24/7 shifts and operations, the shift work can create barriers for female workers who, as statistics show, are disproportionately responsible for family care giving. Non-traditional jobs outside of the skilled craft and the service maintenance, which we just focused on, are also found in administrative support. Now, typically when we see administrative support, we think clerical and secretarial and office work. But here at the MTA, we do have non-traditional jobs also found in the administrative support category. Examples would be stock handlers and warehouse workers. The transit industry has a massive number of male-dominated professions. As we strive to increase female representation at all levels within the MTA, we're competing with other sectors to attract the scarce female professionals and recent graduates in construction, engineering, maintenance, and various other transit-related technical fields. The good news, not only has MTA made progress in recruiting female staff, we have also grown female leaders at all levels of the organization. While females currently make up 18% of the workforce, as the slide represents, we have impressive numbers in leadership roles. 26% executive management, 25% in senior management, and 27% in middle and lower management positions. Each MTA agency has numerous success stories exemplifying the ascension of female employees to influential leadership positions. The following video clip highlights some of these success stories. As we view the video clip, several themes emerge from the different stories that show the mentorship and encouragement many of the diverse group of women credit as part of their success here at the MTA.
The MTA embraces diversity. If you have the right skill sets, you can advance. I myself was the first female general superintendent in the division of track.
I was a stay-at-home mom before coming to Bridges and Tunnels. And as the commanding officer of Bridges North, I now supervise 5 lieutenants, 21 sergeants, and 72 officers.
When I started at Long Island, I was assistant project manager for the engineering department. I progressed to becoming the director of the East Side Access Project, which is bringing Long Island Railroad into Grand Central Terminal.
When I graduated from college with a degree in business management, I heard about a job at MTA, and I interviewed, and 31 years later, here I am.
I started out at Metro North Railroad overseeing one bridge crew, which were welders and iron workers. Today, I manage the engineering group for track and structures.
In 1984, I began as a typist, and I was one of 2 African American women in that group.
There weren't many role models for women when I started out back in 1983. There were probably 2 or 3 women engineers. Metro North has done a lot over the years to try to retain and hire more women, and it's only gotten better.
I began my career in transit over 25 years ago as a car inspector in departmental subways. Building a career in a male-dominated industry was challenging, but it was a very rewarding experience.
In the 31 years at the MTA, I have to say I've had a lot of great bosses and mentors who agree that women in leadership is essential. And my one hope is that the women in the organization will see all the opportunities that are at their fingertips, and they'll reach for the stars and go for them.
Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to collaborate with and learn from many dedicated and knowledgeable colleagues across departments and at all the agencies. I feel very fortunate to have so many great colleagues to work with and many women role models like Ronnie Hakam, who blazed a path for women in transportation.
So my bosses always encouraged me to advance and to take on the challenge, even though I was the only female, because they looked at what skills I had and not what gender I was.
With the support of Metro North President Kathy Rinaldi, I have launched a women's engineering group at Metro North called We at MNR. The MTA is doing a whole lot to support women's careers in the past few years.
Long Island Railroad has many great leaders. I was very lucky to have managers take me into the field and show me how engineering really works.
Human Resources has done a lot to expand the number of women in our ranks through formal outreach, including the intern program, WTS, the League of Railway Industry Women, and the Society of Women Engineers. The broader the talent pool we can recruit from, the better.
What I find most fulfilling now is, as the chief, I'm able to mentor other females behind me and to show them if I did it, then they too can do it.
As a leader for our organization, I've seen the need to mentor and help others the way I was helped in my career to grow to where I am today.
During my journey, I've sought to empower women and change their mindset to not think out of the box, but don't be in the box to begin with. Understanding that leadership is not a position or a title, but it is setting examples and taking action.
I actually wanted to ascend in MTA and in this role, in uniform role, because I want people to say if I can do it, then they can do it. They just have to understand it takes dedication and commitment.
My advice to all women out there: have determination, a strong work ethic, be fearless, break barriers, and build strong bonds along the way. MTA is a great place to work and build a successful career.
We do want to take a moment and thank the Capital Construction, Communication, and Strategic Initiative team who put that whole video together for us. They did a fantastic job. In August 2018, Governor Cuomo issued Executive Order 187, which established a comprehensive statewide objective to promote diversity and inclusion throughout the New York State workforce. In alignment with this initiative, MTA created an all-agency diversity recruitment committee comprised of HR and EEO professionals to identify strategies and increase diversity within MTA and address underutilization. The above 7 strategies were recommended from this committee, which require additional funding for full implementation. Wherever possible, MTA undertakes cost-neutral strategies to increase diversity, such as agency-wide in-person diversity training, monthly diversity events, and we do have agency-specific examples. Each agency's EEO officer can elaborate further if need be on some of these initiatives. Long Island Railroad has commenced establishing employee resource groups. New York City Transit has created 9 transit employee groups to help foster a diverse and inclusive workplace aligned with the New York City Transit's missions, goals, and values. MTA Bus has begun using focus groups to understand the workplace culture and to identify barriers to recruiting, advancing, and retaining females. Metro North, Long Island Railroad, MTA Capital Construction has all began facilitating in-person, agency-wide, mandatory diversity training for all employees. And the list goes on and on. I know we are strapped for time, so I won't continue there. But we are going full force outside the funding and trying to use cost-neutral methods in order to advance diversity. We have listed here the 3 challenges and strategies for increasing female representation. As we mentioned before, we have 18%. For the last 3 years, we have had 18% female representation here at MTA. It might sound like, well, why aren't you doing any better? But that's really pretty good that we are keeping that amount of representation within the workforce, despite the scarce skill set there and the fight for that talent in the midst of a strong economic employment and low employment rates. So that's really pretty good for us. One of the challenges is that we see is a low number of female applicants taking the exams. New York State Civil Service law mandates that many positions within MTA agencies be filled through competitive civil service or other examination. Competitive examinations are also used to fill the majority of the operating and supervisory positions in New York City Transit and MTA Bus. And of course, that's where most of our positions are. Once individuals take this exam, they are placed on a list and they are hired in order of that exam score and that listing. So you cannot break that process when we're trying to hire applicants. For example, when New York City Transit track workers exam was administered, 14,198 applicants took the exam. Of those, 9% were female. And that's who took the exam. So then we have to go back to look to see how many passed the exam and what number they were placed on the list. Similarly, MTA Bus had 2,999 applicants take the bus operator selection survey examination. 525, which is 18% of those, almost 3,000 were females. And we did have the number of females who passed that exam, and it was 414. So you can see there's an additional challenge there when we're trying to increase our numbers for female. And we also have market competitiveness and the large number of skilled craft positions, and we kind of spoke to that before, so I won't go through that right now. Last 2 slides we're going to kind of take a look. We've had questions in the past about the Title VI and the Title VII complaint process. The question that the board has asked is, why is it that so many of the Title VI complaints are found in favor of the agency. So we have outlined both of the processes. Here's the Title VI complaint process. Now, any person who believes that they have been discriminated against on the basis of race, color, or national origin in programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance can file a Title VI complaint. And of course, as recipients of that federal funding, MTA is required to have a process in place to investigate and track those Title VI complaints. And this is our process. The time period for filing the complaint is 180 days of the alleged incident. Complaints that are filed outside that 180 days are deemed untimely. However, the EEO officers have the discretion to accept complaints when extenuating circumstances have exist that prevent the timely filing of the complaints. I'm not going to go through the entire process, but what has happened is in our reporting for 2017 and 18, complaints were labeled decided in favor of the agency. That included complaints where there was insufficient evidence to complete an investigation. That would mean maybe someone filed a complaint and then we followed up and tried to get in touch with the complainant and they did not call us back, or they did not provide additional information, or there was no witnesses there, so we could not substantiate the allegation, or the witnesses did not want to participate in the investigation. And also where there was evidence that did not support the complainant's allegation. So it could have been a situation where the operator was just following the procedure and the customer did not like that particular procedure and wanted them to go outside of that, and the operator did not do that. So that is one of the reasons that we have so few that are found in favor of the complainant. As we look at our Title VII process, we have more control there. We have control of the complainant, the respondent, and in most time the witnesses. We also have control of most likely documents that we can go back and pull, locations that we can go and check to see if the incident appears to have taken place as alleged. So MTA, as recipients of federal funding, is required to have a Title VII process. Title VII complaints are filed by employees or applicants. Employees who believe that they have been discriminated on the basis of race, color, religion, creed, national origin, ancestry, sex, sexual orientation, age, disability, predisposing genetic characteristics, gender identity and expression, pregnancy, veteran or military status, victims of domestic violence, stalking, or other sex offenses, or other legally protected bases can file Title VII complaints. So as you can imagine, we are quite busy with responding to allegations of Title VII violations. When investigating these Title VII complaints, the time period for filing is 365 days of the date of the alleged allegation or the date that the employee became aware. So I'll only take a moment because it's pretty much consistent. If the complaint is decided in favor of the complainant, what that simply means is based on the investigation, there is sufficient evidence for a rational person to believe that one or more of MTA's EEO policies have been violated. If the complaint is decided in favor of the agency, that simply means that based on the information, there is insufficient evidence for a rational person or a reasonable person to believe that MTA EEO policies have been violated. It is not necessarily a finding of innocence when there's a finding in favor of the agency. For example, a complainant may not be able to substantiate the allegations because there were no witnesses. There's only two people, he said, she said, and we don't have a way to determine, that there was more sufficient evidence on one side or the other. So I'm going to pause right now and see if you have any questions on any of that lengthy material that I delivered to you.
3 comments. First of all, Rosalind, I love the deep dive approach to the issue of women in the workforce and to the issue of our title complaint process. It's much easier for a board member to understand what's happening when you do deep dive on one thing rather than presenting all of the data on all of the issues, because there's so many issues always. Secondly, the best female recruiting thing I've ever seen is your little video. And if you could play that to the public, I think people would understand that we have really good jobs for women here.
There was also a commercial that I heard. I listened to 1010 Wins. I know I'm an old lady, but it was a female conductor, and she tells her story. I thought that was so compelling. I just, and I keep hearing it over, which I think is great. I'm sorry, Suzanne.
No problem. The third is an observation about the world in which we all live. Kathy Rinaldi, like Phil and Andy, visit the stations and talk to our customers. It's a little hard to do when the sun's just coming up and it's not even 6 o'clock and they're all running with their coffee. So the board members tend to try to pull people in. Hey, you want to meet the president of Metro North? And 4 out of 5 times they say, yeah, where is he?
Yeah.
We're changing that.
We're changing that, and we're doing really good. I was just so impressed with our management numbers. Those percentages were very impressive. Again, kudos to Capital Construction, Communications and Strategic Initiative team. We have the complete video. There were 14 women that were interviewed, and we shortened it up so that we didn't take too long on the video, but they're going to put a link out there, and each EEO officer will have a copy of that link. Right now, we do have all of the complete interviews on the Capital Construction Diversity Department's website.
And I just have a random question. There used to be, years ago, I remember attending an event, Women in Transportation. Do they still have that group? Okay.
Yes.
And they still, yeah. And they usually honor women once a year who have, have exceeded.
Yes,
So they still
actually,
do.
MTA has been honored recently.
Great. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Green. Great job. Great
Got those
presentation.
2 more.
Oh,
I'm
2
sorry.
more.
We just talked about women. I can't leave everybody else out. An analytical breakdown of the MTA workforce begins on page 62 of the Diversity Committee book. Page 63 gives a detailed breakdown by agency of female and minority representation. Over the past 3 years, MTA has consistently hired females and minorities at a higher percentage compared to their current workforce presence. Page 69 through 76 of the Diversity Committee book provides a detailed breakdown by job category of underutilization for female and minorities for each agency. MTA-wide, we are meeting 5 of our 8 goals for females, as we just went through. Our strategies for improvement here is to expand the relationships with professional and minority organizations to increase female and minority applicants in our recruitment pools.
Thank you. So now, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, it's been 10 years since the state of New York enacted a state law to give the MTA the ability to create our small business mentoring program. And our program expires on 12/31. But thanks to our Albany office, our bill passed both houses with 0 questions from the floor. And so once the bill is signed off by the governor of the MTA Small Business Mentoring Program will be extended for 10 years. And so that date is going to be 12/31 in 2029. So George is going to give us a brief update on the Small Business Mentoring Program.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Full report is on page 86. Over the last 10 years, we have awarded 379 contracts totaling $369 million. This year, the first 6 months, we have had 11 contracts awarded, totaling a little over $14 million. Our service disabled veteran, we have 7 firms that are currently in the program. 2 firms recently were awarded contracts totaling $800,000. Our small business loan program, over the last 10 years, we have issued out 114 loans totaling $16 million. Similarly, with our bond program, we have assisted firms in securing $369 million in surety bonding. Currently, our program is achieving its goal, and we are on an upward trend. As Mike mentioned, we're looking forward to the next 10 years of continuing growth within the program. And that will conclude my presentation. Thank you.
And for those of you all who saw our advertising campaign on the subway cars, it was a great campaign with a lot of positive feedback and positive comments. And the reason for the outreach campaign was for us to recruit more firms into our small business mentoring program. There's currently about 225 firms in the program currently as we speak. So Ray Burke is going to give us a update on the SVOB contract compliance metrics.
Good afternoon. MWDBE and SDVOB contract compliance. The overall MTA MWBE goal is 30%. During the state fiscal year 2019, which is April 2018 through March 2019, the MWBE participation in contract awards was 15%, and the MWBE participation in payments on ongoing contracts was 27%. The overall SDVOB goal is 6%. During the same period, the SDVOB participation in contracts award was 4%, and the SDVOB participation in payments on ongoing contracts was 3%. The overall MTA DBE goal is 18%. For the first half of the federal fiscal year 2019, which is October 2018 through March 2019, the DBE participation in contracts awards was 24%, and the DBE participation in payments on ongoing contracts was 23%. Contracts, we're currently monitoring contracts for goal of about 1,800 contracts, which is an increase from previous years. As far as site visits are concerned, in 2018, DDCR conducted 665 site visits. During January through March 2019, 165 site visits were conducted, an average of 55 monthly site visits, which exceeds our 50 per month goal. Closed contracts. In 2018, DDCR closed 121 contracts. During January through March 2019, 37 contracts were closed, an average of 12 monthly closed contracts. The status of MWDBE and SDVOB contract compliance. The WBE and SDVOB goals are not being met. This is a trend of downward in the WBE and SDVOB area. As far as WBE is concerned, legacy contracts, which consist of awards prior to the MTA's 30% goal, and other historical contracts were awarded with 10% goal WBE goals. Also, the lack of certified WBEs in certain trades and projects with specialized equipment and requirements resulted in reduced or waived goals. SDVOB, the SDVOB program is less than 3 years old. Currently, there are approximately 600 SDVOB certified firms in the program. Unfortunately, less than 100 SDVOB firms are certified within our region. The strategy for improvement in these areas, DDCR will expand relationships with and actively recruit various women, veteran, and ethnic trade groups and associations to identify best practice in the minority community. We will also design smaller contracts in the $3 million to $15 million range to allow greater participation for MWDBE and SDVOBs as primes. The discretionary spending threshold has increased to $1 million. This was presented at today's Finance Committee meeting.
Let me make a quick comment on that, is that out of 96 state agencies and authorities, the MTA had a $400,000 threshold, while the rest of the agency had a $200,000 threshold. So in this year's session, the other 95 agencies are going to increase their threshold to $400,000. We're increasing ours to $1 million because of the larger projects. And Christine Norman is going to give a quick success story in one area that we have that we are extremely very, very, very proud of.
Good afternoon, everyone. We actually wanted to highlight two procurement departments for the MTA today, and the first being New York City Transit. New York City Transit has led the way with MTA's discretionary procurement awards. Transit, year over year, performs the highest level of MWBE and small business concern awards to MWBEs and small business concerns, averaging approximately $32.8 million a year. From 2012 to 2018, New York City Transit has awarded over $230 million in discretionary contracts with MWBEs. So transit has been an example and continues to be an example to the MTA agencies that supplier diversity and inclusion can be realized on everyday procurement opportunities. Secondly, we'd like to, I would like to give a special thank you to Steve Plachaki, the Senior Vice President of Procurement and Supply Chain for New York City Transit. We would also like to recognize Headquarters Procurement for discretionary awards to MWBEs for IT consultancy. The Information Technology and Consulting discretionary contract was designed to provide New York State certified MWBEs with the opportunity to work directly with the MTA as prime contractors. These contracts are currently supporting the consolidated MTA IT department ability to retain MWBEs as project consultants, as well as supplement in-house project staff for critical projects. 29 MWBE firms were awarded competitively negotiated contracts on an as-needed basis. And to date, we've awarded over 500 purchase orders, totaling $81 million. So 23 of the 29 vendors have won more than one contract. And this focused initiative has helped to build the pool of eligible, experienced MWBEs available to compete for other prime contracts with the MTA. And some of those same vendors on our discretionary IT contract are now have been awarded non-discretionary contracts for IT consulting services. So the initiative is indeed working and building the pool of available MWBEs that can compete for non-discretionary opportunities. So special thanks to MTA IT Technology Group, Reggie Matella, the Acting Director of Procurement, and to David Ross, the Chief Procurement Officer. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Christine. And it's one thing about having programs on the books, but it's a different thing about fully embracing it and using it. And these are two prime examples of what can be done. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, David.
Continuing, on capital projects, the MTA DBE goal is 18%. During the first half of the fiscal year 2019, 20% DBE participation in contract awards, and 27% DBE participation in payments on ongoing contracts. The MTA MBE goal is 15%. During the state fiscal year 2019, we achieved 14% MBE participation in contract awards and 12% MBE participation in payments on ongoing contracts. The MTA WBE goal is 15%. During the same period, we achieved 8% WBE participation in contract awards and 9% WBE participation in payments on ongoing contracts. The MTA SDVOB goal is 6%, and we achieved 3% SDV participation in contract awards and 1% SDV participation in payments and ongoing contracts. The status, once again, WBE and SDVOB goals are not being met. The trend is also similar to the MWDBE and SDB contract compliance. We have a downward trend in WBE and SDVOB, and our strategies for improvement are the same.
Thank you, Ray. The next area that we're going to talk about are legal fees. So in 2017, when we first started looking at the amount of legal fees that were awarded in conjunction or in relation to the amount of legal fees that were issued to minority women-owned firms, we were at 4%. In 2018, that number increased to 8%. Currently speaking, that number is 15%, and so there's been growth. However, the growth has evolved with non-ethnic WBE law firms. So as a strategy of including our ethnic minority-owned law firms, our black law firms and Hispanic law firms, we are going to bring in those law firms again and reintroduce them to the operating agency so the growth can be balanced and can be consistent. Because our goal, last year they were $41 million in legal fees awarded to law firms. That number is about 4.5% when it comes to ethnic minority law firms. So we must and we will do a better job of engaging these law firms who are certified by the state of New York and who can share in the fees that we are in fact awarding to. And so we are now going to once again bring those law firms back in and have them reintroduced to all of the agencies so we can move on and improve. We're going to have a brief presentation by Patrick Isom, who is going to give us an update on our MWBE investment bankers.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we reach the tail end of the committee meeting here, I just want to go through it really quickly. From April 2018 to March 2019, which is the state fiscal year, MB participation was 14%, WBE participation was 13%, and SDVOB participation was 6%, for a total of 27% of total underwriting fees paid to MWBE certified firms and 6% of underwriting fees paid to SDVOB certified firms. The status right now, we are meeting our SDVOB goals of 6%, but unfortunately our MWB goals are short by 3%, because we reached 27, we're short by 3% for the fiscal year ending March 2019. And that's basically as a result of lower total underwriting fees paid to all underwriting firms, because we're changing the way, the MTA has changed the way we issue our bonds. Currently, we're issuing more competitive debt as opposed to negotiated debt. And the fees that we report for this report are mostly from negotiated bond issuances. Trends, we're upward trending. And one of the strategies which we're continuing to do or trying to do is to find opportunities for negotiated bond transactions where only certified MWBE and SDVOB firms will participate. And note that as of June 2019, we've already implemented this strategy. The specific bond transaction was actually discussed today in Finance Committee, and it was led, it was a joint venture MBE team of the Williams Capital Group and PNC Capital, and Williams Capital Group was the certified MBE firm. The statistics for that particular transaction will be highlighted in the September 2019 Diversity Committee meeting.
let me also just add that the finance department is the only area in the whole entire MTA that achieves this SDVOB goal at 6%. Thank you, Patrick. I want to just give a brief comment on our asset fund managers. Currently speaking, as of March 31st, 2019, MWBEs are managing $1.2 billion in assets for the MTA. It's my understanding that that's the highest number in the state of New York out of the 96 agencies and state authorities. Dr. Green is going to give us a quick overview on the MTA EEO policies.
The updated Americans with Disabilities Act policy statement is found on page 144 of the Diversity Committee booklet, and the updated sexual and other discriminatory harassment policy is included on page 146. These policies were signed and became effective in April 2019.
And as we close, I want to just personally thank all of the DDCR staff, all of the MWBE liaisons at each one of the agencies, and all of the EEO officers, because I know that they come in every day, and under sometimes challenging circumstances, they're here, and they get the job done. So thank you.
I would like to say thank you also, and the report was very helpful to me as my first committee meeting, and a lot of information. I would ask that for me, for next time, I would just like to see from each agency information on your persons with disabilities and as a makeup of your workforce. And I would also like a breakdown of your complaints for external the other, like, because other has like 3 or 4 categories in it. So if you could break that down for me, I'd appreciate it. And with that, does anyone have anything else? So I would say we have a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.